got Stephanie, Jan, and Christine. Stephanie.
Yes, my name is Stephanie Wells, and I work with the Canada Organic Trade Association. And I work with the Canada Organic Trade Association. I just wanted to thank the government of British Columbia for recognizing Organic Week and for the support that's going into organic agriculture. I'm not going to take a lot of your time because I've given Diane an information package, so you have homework. But I do have a request from the COABC.
I just saw them last week.
Great, great. So you probably already have that.
Chris Channing, Mary Bauer?
Yes, yes.
Certified organic?
Yes.
Yep, we're looking into it.
Okay.
We've also had an ex officio member on COABC, which I put on. We also asked my deputy minister to think about taking organic product, because individuals don't have the critical mass to promote organics the way they should, to Asia. I think Asia, not only is British Columbia a great market for Asia, Avalon Dairy, which is an organic dairy in British Columbia, is putting milk on a plane and selling it in Hong Kong right now. So if you don't think organics have some huge value in terms of British Columbia agriculture or international agriculture, it is crazy. I'm a huge fan of it. The critic and I will play politics back and forth in the House. The one thing I will say is we both agree that organics have great potential in this province, and it's something we need to grow. So you're preaching to the choir.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. I have one more ask of my own, and that is that British Columbia really led the country with extension services, British Columbia and Quebec. And that extension service has been cut, and we would dearly love to see it come back to help more farmers transition to organic methods.
Yeah. And we had that service there for 3 years, and that was a pilot program, right, in terms of can COABC make it self-sustaining. Unfortunately, they weren't able to, and I'm not blaming them for it. That's lots of things happen.
Yeah.
But the program funding ran out. But we do now have one of our sector specialists who has other duties as well, sadly, but deal with organics.
Sorry, Don. The question was about extension services. Could you define extension services?
It's just an individual who helps grow an industry. So if there's a question from a producer, for the most part, about how to, for example, you don't want someone throwing up the wrong variety of grape on land that has no chance to grow Merlot, right? So they can give that kind of advice. They can give some farming advice, everything from environmental farm use planning to a whole bunch of other aspects. It helps grow the industry. Yeah, but there are fewer government employees in 2011 than there were in 2001. And don't get me wrong, in agriculture we've taken some hits. You know.
Thank you, Jan. Then Christine. Then Pete and Dee.
I'm Jan Bevan. I'm a small farmer here in Hornby. So I'm talking to you with your Minister of Agriculture hat on. And I'm going to put this list of comments to your assistant there. But in general, my list of comments concerns the discrepancy between agribiz, industrial scale agriculture, and small family farms. And there have been a lot of recent regulation that impacts small family farms. An example is the washing of eggs. I used to be able to take my eggs to the co-op store. They would have my name on them. People would know they were buying Jan's eggs, Elderfield Farm eggs. Now, there's no one on the island that has a licensed, inspected egg washing facility. And so local eggs are not sold at the co-op store. Fortunately, and I hope this will continue, we can still sell them at farmers market and farm gate. Another example is slaughter. You know how much it costs to come here. If we were to take a single steer to Gunther's, to a licensed inspected facility in Courtenay, and then make another trip to pick up the meat, to bring it back, to be able to sell that at the co-op store, we're losing money right there. Yeah. So the regulations that affected a farmer butchering on their own property and selling not through a retail outfit, but from their own farm gate, have really impacted us.
And you're familiar with the D&E license?
I'm familiar with quite a few regulations that impact small farmers, particularly on the Gulf Islands where we have transport issues. So one of the proposals that's being kicked around is something like a two-tier system, where if you're dealing with an enormous shed full of pigs, or an enormous shed full of thousands of chickens, or a feedlot, that you have one set of regulations, and if you're a backyard farmer, that you have another set of regulations.
And the e-licenses for 10 or fewer animals, and I can't remember. It's not even under my ministry, it's Ministry of Health, but and D I think is 15. But the reality is, and this is a world situation we have to face, when there is an issue of whether it is illness or anything to do with regs, if the Americans can find a reason to shut our borders down and stop that transportation of animal, they'll do it. And we as a country, traceability is so important now. And I know people do things with good intent, but as a province, and we have 180,000 head of cattle in this province. So we used to have 400. And the industry has taken a huge hit over the last number of years. And, you know, if we have a scenario where the Americans say, we have an excuse now to shut our border down and make sure you guys cannot ship beef, it will be devastating to the whole industry. 96% of all farms in British Columbia are family owned. Some are really big, like a dairy, you know, but the reality is they're still owned by the Smith family. I have no interest in seeing British Columbia evolve into agri-industry, like if you ever watch Food Inc., which I'm sure you've seen and stuff like that.
I don't have television.
Okay, well, I'm not interested in seeing the 80,000 head of cattle feedlot out there. I think we have a pretty good industry in British Columbia. We can always do better. I understand where you're coming from, and people in the rural areas, and especially rural island areas, there's an extra challenge. I'll bring that issue up with the minister, and you got some information you can leave with Diane?
Yes,
please. Is Brian your son? No. Brian Bevan?
I know, I'm the daughter.
Oh, okay.
I own a family farm.
Yeah. So there's other things, like housing for extended family on the farm. We're all packed into one small house. There are a whole lot of other issues, and of course the huge one is to not alienate farm land. So I'll pass this on and I'll stop talking.
Sure. And I mentioned to the Islands Trust guys today something about a delegation agreement that the ALC can do with areas, and I think maybe on the Gulf Islands as a very distinct region, a delegation agreement might have some opportunity.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine.
My name is Christine Hunt, and I did receive a letter from your office regarding the trains, the passenger train and transportation, which is so short-sighted to be not having it run, considering the, you know, carbon, etc. I guess I want to know what the status is, and are we moving towards some bringing it back and linking it up with the ferries, linking it up properly with the buses?
The Island Corridor Foundation, it did shut down because there is some safety issues on it, and that's fair. The Island Corridor Foundation asked for $7.5 million from the federal government, provincial government, to bring the safety issues up. One of the nice things of being in cabinet is you get a bit more play. And so one of the things we were able to win, and the other MLAs in Vancouver, they were all four of us from the government side were unanimous in this. We wanted our $7.5 million to be put on the table. Ministry of Transportation obviously has limited dollars. They find reasons not to do it. We won the day, and I think in the end, Blair Lexton, the minister, was just making us justify it really well. So we did. We have our $7.5 million on the table. One thing we did ask though is the $500,000 of that be used towards a trestle study. We don't want to say, well, we're going to put a band-aid on a situation, but you're hemorrhaging over here. And there is some concern about, you know, what's it going to take in the next couple of years to make sure our trestles are safe. To spend $50 million and find next year we need $200 million would not be, I think, money well spent unless your eyes are wide open. We were waiting for the feds to come up with their $7.5 million, but we weren't asked to come up with their 7.5. That's their job. I've talked to Minister Duncan about it. But again, summertime, things don't happen. They just had their election. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe they're waiting for the trestle study, which is underway and should be released fairly soon. But what we were asked to do as Island MLAs, we came through on that one. And I agree. I told the Premier and my colleagues, I do not want to be the MLA that shuts down the UNN Railway. So, and we came through on that one.
That's looking at the clock, and we've got about 15 minutes more of questions if we need that, and then we can have perhaps 10 minutes of just mingling before we go off to the ferry. You're a good mingler. We got Pete and Dean and Muggs. Pete.
Very quickly, I'm Pete Kimmerly, Senior Master of the Ferry, retired. We've just had a whole bunch of meetings, and I just want to share with you my conclusions of these meetings. The Coastal Ferry Act, in my view, is a social experiment, that social engineering experiment that has failed. The Commissioner's #1 priority is to prioritize financial sustainability. The graph of declining traffic is diverging from rising costs at such a rate that the Commissioner's #1 principle is impossible to achieve. I think the Coastal Ferry Act needs reworking. Those are the conclusions of these meetings.
Yeah. No, if possible, that I can pass that message along. But if you ever want to put that down, like some thoughts on one page, whether you want to share your name with the person I pass it on to or not,
Sure.
And it's up to you. In that case, I just don't like people knowing that I'm passing their name forward without their knowledge. You know, can you do that? And then I will put it in front of Minister Lekstrom's desk when he's sitting there. Over a second question period together.
And one other comment, based on a number of factors, it is my belief that the cable ferry should wither on the vine.
Yeah. Fair enough. And you know what, if that is the general consensus of the room, that's my job as MLA to share. And I'm not hearing, to be honest, a huge group in favor of it, but the reality is, again, I said earlier, I'm glad to see an organization is at least thinking outside the box, and if you're going to think about it, because if it's a good idea here or not, you know, at least they can do their initial thinking, and then they won't be thinking about it if it's a bad idea necessarily for other rig groups around Gulf Islands. So at least they're considering it.
The wire replacement budget kills it instantly.
Fair enough.
I want to object to that because I am totally in favor of the cable ferry, because Deborah Marshall from the BC Ferry Corporation last week stated that cable ferries run successfully with high technology throughout the province. And what she didn't say was there isn't one of them that pays a red cent. And as long as she's willing to put in a cable ferry at Denman that is free,
same as on the
I'm all for it.
I'll pass that on to you.
In the meantime, we would like to have Buckley Bay as our own terminal. They can't use that for the cable, and we will just replace the barge with a high-speed ferry, and we would like direct service 6 or 7 times a day with an 80 to 100 car ferry, and that would make us happy. The rest of the Islands Trust, so I say, a committee always puts together a donkey instead of a racehorse.
Thank you, Richard. Back to the speakers list. Dean.
I came and Dan and me had a presentation to you about 4 months ago, and you said you'd get back to us in months.
Did I?
You haven't done that. Yeah, it's about an ALR issue in the Islands Trust.
Right. Okay, that was my fault.
Are you going to
this was Denman Island, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I live on Hornby, and I have
yeah.
a farm on Denman, so
yeah.
I'm kind of. The problem is the same problem is here. Is you are not standing up to the Islands Trust on ALR farmland. The trust is making rules, making them up, that are contrary to the ALR Act. So as a farmer, where do I turn?
The ALC is an independent organization, right?
That's right.
And
Does it
don't get me
trump
wrong.
Islands Trust?
Sorry?
Does it trump Islands Trust?
It can, because I think Tony and Fred, you know, there's certain things like OCPs and things like that. Oh, they have to have approval for things like that. They have to give approval to an OCP as it goes forward, an ALR. OCPs that affect ALR land, the ALC has to make a comment on it and can trump it, right? So there is some trumpability. And the reality is too, I have people, whether it's an MLA or a constituent in Kitwanga, coming to me, and they get mad at the ALC for the decision that is being made. And it is an independent group, and I'm glad it is. Sometimes they should do a better job being better communicators, and I apologize. I'll do better. I will get an answer to you on that one.
Good. Maybe, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Issue, just to
Is this the
say
same? Sorry, could we stick with the list if we could?
Okay,
because there's 2 more, and then you
continue a bit then. For instance, you have cows on ALR land. Islands Trust say running cows is land alteration. If I change my herd size, I need a new development permit every time I change my herd size. A development permit costs between $2,000 and $4,000, and how are you going to get it that's going to tell you what land alteration a cow does, or 6 cows? Islands Trust says it's land alterations. ALR says this is silly. But ALR will not stand up to Islands Trust. So I am forced to go through this development permit process endlessly. And I've gone through about 5 of them, and I've spent over $20,000. And it's to the point of being ridiculous, and ALR is at the point of getting quite angry at Allen's Trust. But your ministry won't do anything.
Remember, my ministry and the law is, the ALC is an independent organization, right? Just like the Auditor General, we talked about how they were upset with the way BC Hydro books are. You know what? You want to have those independent elements of it. And I seem to remember too, when we looked at it, and if I didn't translate it back to me, my memory is it was a confusing request to our ministry that we didn't, I'll have to look into it. It wasn't our ask, it was out of our ministry purview. But it's not me passing the buck, I'll find the answer.
Your ministry has passed these bylaws with a promise that they're going to be fixed.
No, we don't pass any bylaws, so we got to make sure we're using the right terminology. We don't pass bylaws.
Approve them. You're the last straw.
No.
Ministry of Community Affairs.
That's the problem I think we came up with then. Ministry of Community and Sport and Cultural Development passes bylaws, not Ministry of Agriculture, in regards to Islands Trust.
Yes, but these are agricultural things.
They do not.
And your department has given
the minister does not approve them. The minister does not approve them.
It doesn't approve them, but your people advise against doing this, and then the Ministry of Community Affairs has the final say.
The key used your word there was advise, and I've advised other ministers on decisions, and they have to make their decisions based on things sometimes that are bigger than what my ministry ask is.
So what about the law of the ALC? Like, does that, these instances there are actually breaking the ALC mandate and the law?
Well, if they were, the ALC would charge, or follow up. We'll have to do some more digging on this one.
I hear Don saying you'll get back to on the original request from
within how long?
Diane, can we make sure I follow up on this one? Dean, what's the last name? Ellis, I'm sorry, Dean.
Diane knows me.
No, I remember you too. I remember the picture of your land was quite pretty, is what you did.
The before and after,
yeah.
You like that?
Yeah.
And I note that the issues that Dean is raising is with the Denman Island Local Trust Committee.
But these issues are still with this island too, because we've had two instances here. One was a Four Corners development, which was just stopped, and the people had nowhere to go. At Ministry of Community Affairs, we had no stop. Another problem we had was we had short-term rentals this year. Big issue. The Islands Trust kept saying it was illegal, when in fact it wasn't illegal. And through a lot of community pressure, it finally got pushed through. But our problem is, when that happens, when they stonewall us with a lie like that, we have nowhere to go. There's no ombudsman, there's no third party. Our only alternative is to sue the trust. That's all that's left for us.
So without getting into too much of a discussion about Dean's last statement, which is...
No, excuse me, you can't tell. I'm asking Don here.
Well, we'll follow up on the conversation by all means, and the disagreements that are between Islands Trust, I don't have full control of, but we'll follow up in conversation again.
I suspect we'll be following up some of the others in other discussions. This is for Don's response. Thanks, Dean. Mugs.
I want to go back to the cable ferry for a minute. I wanted to go on record, I'm opposed to the cable ferry, but I am incredibly concerned about privatizing the cable ferry or privatizing any of our local ferries. I think that is a huge concern for this community.
Hear, hear.
If we end up with a bunch of little private companies selling and buying, running businesses here, Lord knows what'll happen, and we could all end up in a pretty bad situation. And I, as a constituent, want to tell you that I am not happy to know that they have put it out to tender, which I read in the Globe and Mail, that they have put our ferry out to tender.
Just remember though, and as a politician I honestly say that, just because you read it in the paper doesn't mean it's true.
I didn't see any denial from any politician, and I didn't see any denial from the government that that's happened, so.
But lots of times
telling me it's not out to tender and it won't go out to tender, that will make.
I wish the press would come and let me know about every story they're writing and ask for comment, but sometimes they don't get around to it. And sometimes if you know they're writing a story like I did the other day, you've tracked them down to make sure you get some other side to it, but you don't know what stories are being written. And again,
is it true that it is not out to tender? Is that what you're saying?
I've never seen this.
And not going up.
No, but you're not saying it's not out to tender.
I can explain.
But it's not under my ministry, and the reality is, I only have been aware of conversations I have, and I haven't seen anything to do with that. I know there is a study underway, but tell you what, I'll ask for a briefing when I get back to Victoria from the Ministry of Transportation.
Okay, we've got, I think, time for 3 questions, if we can make them shortish. We've got Doug, and I'm sorry, your name is?
Dan.
Dan and April.
I just want to give a comment on that, because BC Ferries had said they would be putting it out to 2.
Okay, okay, thank you. BC Ferries has said they will be putting it out, so that's...
That's not strictly active.
And I think that's a big concern for all of us.
Okay, so we need to have that clarified. How can we get back on email, Tony, on the clarification of that, just to save time now for the discussion?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Sorry, that was Doug, and then...
Well, you told Peter you would appreciate having 1 page with his thoughts.
Well, it's always
1 page with my thoughts.
Oh, perfect.
On the cable ferry.
Okay.
And I just want to ask 1 question.
Sure.
What happens when this design and supply P3 contract is finished and we buy our ferry from China, and after 3 months of work, the motor stops working? And the only place you can get a spare part is in China, and it will take 3 months.
Yeah.
What happens then? This scares me more than 20 coal mines.
Let's not put the ferry before the slip, though. But I'll find out some more, by all means.
This is our last question, unless there's something absolutely pressing that someone needs to raise. But then,
well, I think that the option of a bridge, and I support this gentleman, probably is financially more doable. It seems to me that BC Ferry Corporation is very independent to the point that it makes decisions totally isolated from financial reality in the province. Now, I know, being from Denman, I know there will be strong resistance to ever having a bridge there. But the reality is, you could do a public-private partnership. You could have a toll on that bridge, which would be far less than ferry rates. The other thing is, if Denmanites still like the idea of a ferry, put a gate on each end and let 50 cars off every hour.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that scares me is 180 million. Like, I've only been in government for 2 years, right? And it's a learning curve like you can't believe. I didn't even want to think about going after $180 million for any project until I get the $600 million you need for the North Island Hospital project. That's...
Well, BC Ferry Corporation...
Oh, they don't pull it up in there.
Tell you, it gets rid of the run. But anyway, back to the agriculture. I guess the frustration here, what Dean's talking, is something that's gone on since '98. And both the ALC has told Islands Trust to amend this development permit area, and Mr. Van Dulsen said the same thing. It's been 3 years, it's been ignored.
Oh.
So the conflict has been identified, has been fixed. A declaration should be made that this portion of the bylaw is of no, it simply isn't valid. So I guess the frustration here is, once you have made a decision, and I'm talking about Mr. Van Dulsen, and the ALC has given direction, and the Islands Trust simply ignores you, why doesn't something happen?
Oh, what I'll have to do is, I'll have to talk to the chair of the ALC, Richard Bullock, and see if he can give me some more insight onto that.
And we'll give you some papers here today,
Yeah,
so I don't even take any more time.
No, and I do have to go, but first of all, I apologize it's not longer. But I think, regardless, this meeting, and it was nice because it wasn't all hugs and puppies. That you guys have some really valid concerns, and I think I really enjoyed having the opportunity to come over today. And chances are that if you folks would say, well, he came and he listened, and I can't say I promised to win everything, and I know there are some people who you and I will disagree on issues, but this is something I think is very valuable. I'd like to come back again, and if possible, people could bring maybe a friend or two with them, and maybe sometime in the spring when we're not in session and have another meeting like this, You guys have an absolutely, I think, a unique and distinct community in British Columbia. One that I think in Comox Valley we're lucky to have. And you can just see on pretty much every tourist brochure we put out for the Comox Valley, there's at least one picture of Helliwell Park or Whaling Station Bay or Tribune Bay or somewhere else in between, whether we visit it or not. And the artistic community on the island is phenomenal. The community spirit, I think, is bar none, whether it is building a structure or helping out your neighbors. And the reality is the thoughts you folks have, again, even if I didn't agree with what you said today, doesn't mean I don't take it in. And part of my job is to share concerns that are raised with my colleagues. So I don't just put it in a box and park it. So I would appreciate if you would like to come out again for tea and coffee and maybe sometime in the spring if that works out. And if you happen to be in the Comox Valley or even in Victoria, by all means, please don't hesitate to try to stop by. As minister though, the one caveat is my days are full, so if you're coming down to the valley, talk to Diane first and see if we can block some time, because the worst thing I'd hate to do is say, I'm in the building but I don't have time because I'm stuck in a meeting and I don't want to come across as rude. That matter, but please thank you again and enjoy your new ferry slips as much as you can, and we'll see you soon hopefully. Take care.
I think Don's got exactly 5 minutes if you can. Then we'll give lots of time to get to 3 o'clock.
Okay, is that what? Okay.
So I think leader 22.
You tell me, you're the island man.
Dennis is going to join you and down the road. Just a moment.